but is instead an Egyptian woman who wears English suits but wears them in subversive colours and is generally amazing. Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews, I'm Judith, and today I am bringing you a review of P. Djèlí Clarke's A Master of Djinn. This review has been a long time coming because this was actually one of my top favourite books that I read in 2020. And yes, it is May. I had a review copy of this for the American edition, which comes out in May. Very excited about it. Planned out this review, put it in my schedule, and then I got the news that actually this is being published in the UK by Orbit, in the US it's being published by Tor, and it's out in August. So I thought that for Americans among you, we would talk about it now, and then come August, we'll find a way to celebrate the books then for the UK edition. I don't have a cover for the UK edition yet, so I'm going to be using the American one. Suffice to say, this has been a long time coming. I'm very excited to talk about this book. Some quick disclaimers before we start. Yes, I was sent a free digital review copy of this book from the publisher via NetGalley. All opinions on my own. Nobody's paying me to talk about books. I'm also going to keep things as spoiler-free as humanly possible. This is a mystery novel. I don't spoil mystery novels. I'm not an asshole. But if you do want to go in knowing absolutely nothing, if you want to experience this book and this world for yourself, please do click away now. I don't want to ruin it for you. This is the first full-length novel, but the third work in the Fatma El-Shawari world. So we have a short story, which is called A Dead Djinn in Cairo, and a novella, which is called The Haunting of Tramcar 015. All of these works take place in the same world with the same characters. Dead Djinn in Cairo will give you a better lead-in, but I will come on to reading order in a bit. P. Djèlí Clarke is an American author who is known for writing all sorts of things, including this series. P. Djèlí Clarke is actually a nom de plume, but I never know whether to reveal who these people actually are, so suffice to say, if it is a secret, it is not a well-kept one and you can find out the information online. I think it is pretty safe to say that his work is influenced by his work as an academic historian, whose research spans comparative slavery and emancipation in the Atlantic world. So I personally have read all of his works in this alternative Cairo. I've read those three, but I haven't read Ring Shout or The Black God's Drums, but both are on my list of things that I would like to get to. Plot summary. I feel like I've explained this hundreds and hundreds of times because I was really keen on talking about this at the end of last year, but it's been a while. These books are all set in a alternate Cairo. So we're in the early 20th century, but at some point in the past, somebody opened up a rift and let a lot of the Djinn into Cairo, which turned Egypt and Cairo into a global superpower. So people are now existing alongside the Djinn and their technology that they've brought in. There are also angels, but I don't think I want to get into that at this point. All these different magical and technological advancements meant there was a need for the Ministry of Alchemy, Enchantments and Supernatural Entities, for whom our main character Fatma works as kind of a detective. This novel takes place after the first two works have happened, and we follow Fatma again in a different adventure, but building off some of the things we've explored in the first two books. So the mystery starts with the murder of a strange secret group and the revelation that potentially somebody is saying that the famed person who brought the Djinn into Egypt is back, or at least somebody's pretending to be him. So before we talk about anything else, I'm going to talk about whether you need to reread or read the other two works in order to read this. Short answer, not really. But to give you my long answer, I think you probably ought to at least read A Dead Djinn in Cairo. Master of Djinn will give you all the information that you need, it will tell you what's going on, you will have a feel for the world, it builds it all up wonderfully. But for one thing, Dead Djinn in Cairo is absolutely free to read online, and for another, it just gives you that extra little bit of background information that you might not have in terms of the character's connection to some of the plot goings on. I'm trying not to spoil either, and it's not going very well. It's about 40 pages, it won't take very long. I highly, highly recommend picking it up. But also I think the benefit of that is that a lot of people I know who read A Dead Djinn in Cairo went, that was great, but I really wanted more. You can have more. You can then go and read a whole novel. In terms of The Haunting of Tramcar 015, I don't think it's as essential to have read that. I do think it's fantastic. I do think you ought to read it, but it won't necessarily have quite as much impact on your understanding of the characters or the relationships going on in this novel. But I do think that you will have the best reading experience if you read all three in publishing order. Sometimes when I say things like that, I'm thinking, gosh, I've just signed people up to read another 1,000 pages and then read a whole other novel. But in this case, it's a novella and a short story. It's just worth reading, I guess. Let's talk about the world, because I think it's absolutely fantastic, and this applies to the whole series, but especially to this novel. This is like steampunk Egypt. There's just some beautiful different threads coming together in this, and I really, really enjoy it. One of the things I really love is that Clarke takes this idea of detective story set in Egypt and kind of flips it on its head. What if the detective isn't some random European man walking in and calling everyone natives, but is instead an Egyptian woman who wears English suits but wears them in subversive colours and is generally amazing. We'll come on to how much I love Fatma in a moment, but I just think this is a really clever idea. It's a cool setting, no doubt, but it's also doing more than that. As somebody who grew up on Agatha Christie, I think that it's really interesting to see this story from a different angle. Obviously, something like Death in the Nile didn't have Djinn in it, but in my opinion, that just adds more. I like having the fantasy element.
Yeah, that well-known mystery novel, Death in the Nile.
I am of the opinion that you cannot have a good detective story without a good detective, and Fatma is impeccable. She manages to shoulder this idea of being the youngest female agent working for the ministry without it feeling kind of cheesy or tokenistic. One of the other things I enjoyed is Fatma is a queer woman in a world that is still feeling its way around kind of feminism and intersectionality. That's something that is explored a lot more in Tramcar. It's just a really nuanced character. If you enjoyed those elements of the other books, I think this adds another layer to it in that Fatma gets a new female assistant, and there's some other interesting dynamics that come through in that relationship. My private personal hope, I have absolutely no idea if this is the case, but I'm really hoping that we get a continuation of that partnership and into kind of like a two female detectives kind of thing, like classic detective stories. That's what I want. I just want endless books set in this world. I don't want to go too much into the actual like meat of the plot of this book because detective stories are unique to everyone and I think everyone gets something different out of them. I don't want to potentially ruin that one element for you. Suffice to say, I think this is a really, really good mystery. One of the other things that I enjoyed is that I managed to work out whodunit just before the detective did, which is just the right sweet spot for me. I like to feel very intelligent, but also I don't like to then have to see the detective get it wrong for ages. I want that like just a couple of pages of me going, oh no, and keep reading. That's what I want. And this book definitely walks the line of that for me perfectly. I think my only con would be, if I had to have one, that I don't love that there are some elements of the book that wouldn't make as much sense if you didn't read Djinn in Cairo. And I think that were it not completely free to read Djinn in Cairo, I would be annoyed by that. But I think because it's free to read, I don't mind it too much. And I think you can read it very quickly and just get in your headspace. But it feels like that's the first few chapters, but it wouldn't make sense to be the first few chapters. You know, it's just a weird world building snag that the book's got itself into. I don't think it's a deal breaker for the book. It didn't ruin my enjoyment of the book. It was just, if I was thinking about reasons someone might not enjoy this. And that's me really nitpicking. I was trying to think of other books to recommend that are similar to this. I think City of Brass is a really obvious comparison. The way that the Djinn are handled in this story is completely different to that, but it's an obvious comparison. And you know, 1800s Cairo, 1900s Cairo, there's some stuff in there. I also wondered about city-based books, which I talk about all the time, but things like City of Lies by Sam Hawke, The Gutter Prayer, all these kind of something is awry in the city kind of books I think would be similar things I would recommend, shall we say. My final thoughts are, yes, you should absolutely read this book. I think it's fantastic. I think you should read the entire series. If you are a mystery lover, if you are like me and you grew up watching Agatha Christie, Poirot.
I do know that those are the same thing. I don't think that Agatha Christie was a fictional detective. I know that.
Jonathan Creek was a big one for me, but anything where the plot resolves and the mystery is solved, this is a book for you. I absolutely adore this world. I'm really interested to see more of it. I really hope there is more of it. And if you're wondering about picking this up, you absolutely should. If you are in the UK and you have to wait till August, I can only apologise, but it'll be very exciting to have a UK edition. I may have to buy the US edition and the UK edition. And yeah, I'm just excited to have the answer for when people say, I read Djinn in Cairo and I wanted more. Now we can be like, here, this is more, take this.
Take this.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this very quick whiz through why I think you should read Master of Djinn. Let me know if you have plans to read it in the comments below, or if there's anything else similar that you would enjoy. What are your favourite fantasy mystery novels? I'm intrigued. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one.
There's gonna be some bloopers now.
Welcome back to Both books are in all the... So the mystery starts with the murder, detective, woman agent.